Monday night professional wrestling appears in Baltimore at the Baltimore Civic Center on the 29th of September. Among the many important matches that have been signed, as we stated last week, unquestionably two stand out more than the others. One, of course, the main event, the other, the match that will employ the services of Greg Valentine. Mr. Valentine meeting the fiery Chief J. Strongbow. And what a match that's going to be. If, in fact, you can term it a match. Perhaps it's more of a war. There's no telling what will happen when they clash in Baltimore. Scheduled as well in the main event, the World Wrestling Federation title holder Bob Backlund will unquestionably perhaps have an uphill battle. Bob Backlund meets one of the most experienced. You can no telling what you can say about Pat Patterson in the lights of accolades. Mr. Patterson has done it all except one thing, and that's gained this title that Bob Backlund now wears around his waist. So we look forward to these two outstanding matches and many others as wrestling returns to Baltimore. Our guest coming into view now, Greg Valentine. Mr. Valentine, now that the time is approaching here, is there a chance that you or perhaps your opponent may be getting just a little antsy? You've had some absolute wars with Jay Strongbow.
That's right. I've got scars all over my face to prove it. Yeah, zoom in here and get a look. Those are scars. Deep scars from Chief J. Strongbow, the clean-cut wrestler, the so-called great Indian wrestler who never uses any illegal tactics or never uses any foreign objects on any of his opponents. But right here, I'm prime example of this. The man has used everything but the kitchen sink on my head. And I have stuck to the rules of wrestling, just like I did the night that I broke his leg on nationwide TV. I didn't do anything illegal. All I used was my finishing hold, the figure 4 leg lock. The Strongbow, if you haven't made your reservations down there in Baltimore at the Hilton or the Holiday Inn, wherever you're staying, don't bother to, because I'm going to reserve you a room at John Hopkins. John Hopkins, that is not a hotel, by the way. That is a hospital. We're going to rent you out the basement in the hospital, because that's where you're going, straight to it, because I am tired of you, Strongbow. I am finished with you. I am sick of looking at that big ugly face, that big ugly nose, and those wild savage eyes staring at me across the ring, Strongbow. This is it. This is the end. No more Strongbow.
Greg Valentine. If we may now, let's bring on the World Wrestling Federation champion. Let's bring on Bob Backlund to discuss your title defense, and what a title defense it should be in Baltimore against Pat Patterson.
Yes, it is. You know, Vince McMahon, Pat Patterson is a great wrestler, and I have a lot of respect for him. I don't really like some of the tactics that he uses and the things that he does to get where he gets, but I have to respect him. I have to respect his ability. I have to respect that he's a man that possibly could take this belt from me in Baltimore, and I'm going to have my hands full. I'm going to give it 100%, Vince, because this belt is something that I've worked hard for. I've been training for this belt since I was 10 years old, wrestled in high school and college, and now as a professional, I'm on the top, and I've got to take the top contenders, and Pat Patterson is the #1 contender, and he's going to go ahead and try to get this belt from me any way he can. He's got his shot, his one time, and it's going to be a rough night, but I'm not going to try to let anybody down in Baltimore. They've been too good to me. They've supported me too well, and I'm going to give them 100%, and I'm going to do my best.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Bob Backlund returns to Baltimore to defend the title against Pat Patterson. Speaking of whom, let's bring on the #1 contender now, along with his manager, the Grand Wizard of Wrestling.
Well, McMahon, it's all over but the shouting. The next time those peepers of yours are lucky enough to gaze at Pat Patterson will be wearing not one but 2 championship belts, fresh from his defeat of your beloved Bob Backlund.
You know, you almost have to laugh sometimes with some of the comments that are made, because, I mean, it's one thing to feel confident. It's another thing to be outlandishly boastful, which I'm sure you would agree your manager is at times, is he not?
He's a great manager, that's all I can say to you. You know, you stand here and you listen to Bob Backlund, the world's champion, telling you about his years in college.
May I interrupt you for a moment? We're out of time. I'm
sure,
sorry.
he just spend it all with Backlund because you're the president of his fan club.